Imagine a creature so powerful it can tear a great white shark in half, yet so disciplined it has never, in the history of the wild, laid a tooth on a human being. It's a paradox that haunts the dreams of marine biologists. We call them killer whales, but that name is a double-sided lie. First, they aren't whales. They are the largest, most lethal species of dolphin to ever grace the planet. Second, they don't just kill, they calculate. They strategize, they mourn. For decades, we've looked at them through the glass of aquarium tanks, convinced we had them figured out. We thought they were just big dolphins. We could train for buckets of herring. But in the last few years, the ocean has started talking back, from organized uprisings in the Mediterranean where yachts are being systematically dismantled, to gangs of orcas in the Pacific that hunt for sport. The truth is finally being revealed. Nothing about the orca is normal. It is a 12,000-pound shadow that defies the laws of nature, possessing a brain more emotionally complex than our own and a culture that predates human civilization. To understand the orca, you have to forget everything you know about animals. You have to start thinking about them as a parallel personhood, a liquid empire that has been watching us from the waves for 6 million years. The story of the orca doesn't start in the water. It starts in the mind. If you were to lay a human brain next to an orca brain, you'd notice something immediately unsettling. Not only is the orca brain nearly 5 times larger, but it's packed with more folds, which is how nature increases processing power in a confined space. But the real abnormality is the paralimbic lobe. This is a massive section of brain tissue that humans simply do not have. In us, the limbic system handles emotions like love, grief, and anger. In an orca, this system is so expanded that scientists believe they experience emotions we don't even have names for. When an orca mother loses a calf, she doesn't just move on. She has been seen carrying the lifeless body of her baby for weeks, pushing it through the waves, refusing to eat until food. They don't share the same paralyzed. The orcas then use their teeth like scalpels to remove the liver, the most calorie-dense part of the shark, and leave the rest. The great whites were so traumatized by this that the entire population fled the region. The apex predator of the world was bullied out of its home by a pair of dolphins who treated them like a snack box. This isn't mindless killing, it's surgical efficiency. They aren't just stronger than the shark, they are smarter than the shark. This brings us to the most controversial headline of the last few years, the war on boats. In the Strait of Gibraltar, a pod of orcas led by a matriarch named White Gladys has begun attacking sailing vessels. They don't bite the hull. They don't attack the people. They go straight for the rudder. They systematically disable the ship's steering until the boat is dead in the water. In several cases, they've caused the ships to sink. The media calls it revenge. Scientists call it a fad. But whatever you call it, it's not normal. There is a theory that White Gladys was once injured by a rudder or a fishing line, and she taught her pod that these objects were toys or enemies. Think about the level of cognitive function required for that. An animal has to identify a specific mechanical part of a human vessel, realize that breaking it stops the beast, and then transmit that instruction to other members of its group. Since 2020, this behavior has spread. It's like a viral TikTok trend, but with 6-tone predators. It proves that orcas are capable of rapid cultural shifts. They can change their society in a matter of months. If they ever decided that humans were on the menu, the oceans would become a no-go zone overnight. But they haven't, and that is perhaps the weirdest mystery of all. Long before SeaWorld or modern research vessels, there was a bond between humans and orcas that sounds like something out of a fantasy novel. In the late 1800s, in a place called Twofold Bay, Australia, a pod of orcas led by a legendary male named Old Tom established what locals called the Law of the Tongue. For 3 generations, these orcas didn't just coexist with the local whaling families. They worked for them. Old Tom would swim to the shore and perform flop-tailing, slapping his massive tail on the surface to alert the whalers that a baleen whale was nearby. The orcas would then act like sheepdogs of the sea, herding the massive baleen whales into the bay and preventing them from diving or escaping. Once the humans arrived in their rowboats to finish the hunt, the orcas would wait for their payment. The whalers would tie the carcass to a buoy and leave it overnight, allowing the orcas to eat their favorite parts, the tongue and the lips. The next morning, the humans would reclaim the rest. This wasn't training. This wasn't domestication. It was a mutual, cross-species contract that lasted nearly 80 years. It only ended when a human broke the law, trying to take a whale before the orcas had their share. Old Tom's pod never forgot the betrayal, and they eventually left the bay forever. It's a haunting reminder that orcas have a sense of fairness and justice that we usually only attribute to ourselves. In almost every other species on the planet, an animal's biological purpose is over once it can no longer reproduce. Evolution usually has no use for a grandmother, but orcas, along with humans and only a handful of other whales, defy this rule. Female orcas stop having calves in their 40s but can live to be over 100. Why? Because an orca grandmother is a living library of survival. When salmon runs fail or the climate shifts, the entire pod looks to the oldest female. She is the one who remembers the secret hunting grounds from 30 years ago. Researchers have found that if a grandmother dies, the mortality rate for her grand calves skyrockets up to 4.5 times higher in the following years. She doesn't just provide care, she provides culture. She teaches the youth where to go and how to behave. This suggests that orca society is built on the preservation of knowledge, not just the survival of the fittest. They aren't just passing down genes, they are passing down a history. Just when we think we've mapped every inch of the ocean, the ghost orca appears. Known as Type D, these are the most mysterious predators on Earth. They look like they came from a different planet, their heads are blunter, like a pilot whale, and their white eye patches are so tiny they're almost invisible. For 60 years, they were known only from a single mass, stranding and a few blurry photos taken by fishermen in the most inhospitable waters on the globe, the Furious 50s, near Antarctica. It wasn't until 2019 that scientists finally tracked down a pod. What they found was an animal that seems to be in the middle of a massive evolutionary split. Type D orcas don't mix with other orcas. They live in the storms and the shadows, hunting deep sea fish in places humans can barely reach. They are a genetic glitch, a reminder that there are still apex predators out there that we haven't even named yet. They are the ultimate proof that the ocean still holds secrets, monsters that are real, breathing, and completely unknown to science. We cannot talk about how abnormal orcas are without looking at what happens when we try to break them. In the wild, orcas are peaceful, social, and remarkably non-violent toward each other. But in the concrete tanks of marine parks, that super brain we talked about begins to eat itself. This is where we see the floppy fin, a 100% collapse rate of the dorsal fin in captive males, a condition almost never seen in the wild. But the collapse is more than physical, it's psychological. Tilikum, the 12,000-pound bull orca, became the face of captive psychosis. After being separated from his mother at age 2 and confined in tiny, dark tanks where he was bullied by other frustrated orcas, Tilikum's mind fractured. He was involved in 3 human deaths, including the horrific incident with trainer Dawn Branchew. This wasn't an accident. This was a protest. When you take a creature that is built to navigate thousands of miles of ocean and process complex social emotions, and you put it in a sterile box, it doesn't just get bored, it goes insane. The fact that orcas are capable of such extreme madness is perhaps the greatest proof of their high intelligence. Only a mind that complex is capable of being truly broken. So, what are we left with? An animal that hunts with the tactical precision of a Navy SEAL, speaks in dialects that change by the mile, mourns its dead with a human-like intensity, and has its own fashions and trends. We call them killer whales, but maybe we should start calling them the people of the sea. The abnormal truth is that we aren't the only ones on this planet with a culture. We aren't the only ones who remember the past and plan for the future. The orca is a parallel civilization, one that has mastered its environment without the need for tools or technology. They have mastered the mind, the family, and the ocean. And as we continue to warm the planet and crowd the seas, they are watching us, from the uprisings in Gibraltar to the silent pods of the Antarctic. They are reacting to a changing world just like we are. The only question is, are we smart enough to listen to what they're trying to tell us? We often think of ourselves as the peak of the pyramid, but the orca proves that evolution can take a different path. It can prioritize social connection over material tools. It can create a brain that feels more than it builds. As the White Gladys pod continues to target ships and the Old Tom legends fade into history, we have to ask, who is the real master of the deep? Maybe the orca isn't abnormal at all. Maybe we are the ones who have forgotten what it means to be part of the world. This final section will push your script toward the 30,000 character mark by weaving in the most dramatic, heart-pounding case studies in Orca history. These are the stories that prove their abnormality through action. The rescue of A-73, the horror of Pen Cove, and the military-grade tactics used to take down the largest animal on Earth. To understand why orcas look at us the way they do today, you have to go back to August 1970 to a place called Pen Cove in Washington state. This is the dark origin story of the Shamo era, and it's a scene that haunts the witnesses to this day. A fleet of speedboats, airplanes, and even underwater explosives were used to herd over 80 southern resident orcas into a shallow bay. The noise was deafening, a tactical sonic assault designed to shatter the orcas' sonar and drive them into nets. As the nets tightened, the cove filled with a sound that veteran divers described as screaming. It wasn't just clicks and whistles, it was a rhythmic, agonizing vocalization from mothers being separated from their calves. In the chaos, 5 orcas, 4 juveniles, and 1 mother who refused to leave her baby, drowned in the nets. But the most abnormal part isn't the death, it's the cover-up. The captors, terrified of a public relations nightmare, slit the bellies of the dead orcas, filled them with rocks, and used anchors to sink them to the bottom of the cove. They thought they could bury the evidence, but the survivors never forgot. To this day, the southern resident population is endangered, their numbers still reeling from the loss of those generations. When we wonder why an orca might flip a yacht or glare at a tour boat, we have to remember they have the memory of an elephant and the social bond of a human family. They remember Pen Cove, but there's one story that breaks the cycle of tragedy, the story of Springer, or A-73. In 2002, a young female orca was found alone in the busy shipping lanes of Puget Sound. She was emaciated, covered in skin parasites, and had breath that smelled of ketosis, a sign she was literally starving. For an orca to be alone is a death sentence. Without a pod, they have no identity. Scientists pulled off something wild. They used acoustic archives to trace Springer's call and realized she was from the A pod in British Columbia. So humans did the unthinkable, rehabbed her in a sea pen and barged her home. At release, her family swam past. She made her signature Wiwa call, they answered. Days later, she was spotted beside her great aunt. Now she's a mom and grandma, the only orphaned orca ever successfully returned to the wild. The pod code, still intact. Want peak orca chaos? Watch them take down a blue whale. In places like Bremer Canyon, pods team up in relay mode, ramming, blocking the blowhole, exhausting the giant. Then comes the brutal finale, tearing out the whale's massive, fat-rich tongue.